Joey, thank you so much for joining us at the 11th Annual Bentonville Film Festival. We're excited to have you here today.
Oh, yeah. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be chatting with you.
Now, for the viewing audience at home, we're here because you have a animated short called POW with the exclamation point, because that's important. Would you please tell the viewing audience what you'd like them to know about the piece?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So I'm an enrolled member of the Cowlitz Indian Tribe, and I grew up on the Tulalip Reservation in Washington State. And growing up, I loved, video games, and it was to the point that my mom would bring me to powwows when I was a kid, and I would literally spend a lot of my time sitting in the bleachers just playing Game Boy. And so this short is inspired by those experiences, and it's an animated short about a young Native American kid trying to find a place to charge their video game console at an intertribal powwow.
Excellent. And with this film, from my research, I saw that part of this is to bring culture to the screen and to stay true to the storylines, which I believe impacted some of your decisions on who worked in and with the film with you. Could you please talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So I had a largely Indigenous team work on the film. It's really important to me, especially when telling Native stories, to have as many Native folks working on the production as possible. Part of it is because they're just these hugely talented Native animation artists that I love working with, like Morgan Thompson, who was our character designer. She's a member of the Cherokee Nation. Like, she won an Annie Award, which is this huge animation award, so why would I not want to work with her? And then also because this is a short that's like, kind of about Native identity and also powwow culture, it's always useful just to have other Native folks in the production so we can have those kind of sidebar conversations of just like, like everything from, is what we're saying here what like feels like a spot on, thing to say about, the Native identity and the Native experience in 2025. And then additionally, it's just great to have somebody to talk to about like, hey, how many Native in-jokes should we cram about this? Is 3 fry bread beats too much, or should we have more than that,
And yes, and the fry bread is prevalent in the film. I love the humor with all of that, and I want to find a place or a way to try fry bread. That's one of those things I've heard about before, but until I saw it in the film, it didn't hit me that I want to try that.
Oh, I mean, it's essentially fried butter. It's very, it's definitely a sometimes food. It's not something you want to eat all the time, but it's great. It's like you take a bite of it. If it's good fry bread, the grease will explode into your mouth when you take the bite. And, you can find it if you go to, if there's any kind of Native or Indian arts markets or powwows in your area, there's usually a couple of people with food trucks selling fry bread and Indian tacos.
Indian tacos.
Oh, okay. So it's so fry bread is to use it in sort of taco terms. Fry bread is like the tortilla shell or the tortilla, and then there are 2 ways that you can have fry bread. One is a sweet way, which is what I'm really used to growing up, which is you put a lot of honey on it and a lot of powdered sugar and jam and things like that. And then there's a savory way where you essentially do it like a taco. So there's taco meat, chilies and stuff like that. And, you can't go wrong. Both options are great.
I love that. It has options. In the film, I saw differing types of animation art being used. The opening is a 16-bit pixel. It goes into some ledger art and into 2D animation. Would you please talk to us a bit about the choices and how that helped carry the story?
So something that was really fun about this short was just experimenting with a lot of different animation styles. So I'm a child of the 90s. I grew up loving, Super Nintendo RPGs like Final Fantasy, Earthbound, and that kind of thing. And because this is a story about a Native gamer, I thought it would be really fun to start the short in sort of a 16-bit Earthbound inspired pixel art style. And to me, a lot of those choices are reflective of the perspectives of the characters. So the reason that the start of the short is in that style is that's how Jake, our young Native kid, views the world, which is through a very video gamey filter. And then the main animation style for the short when we're in the powwow space is this beautiful watercolor art style, which I think is how Jake's parents view the powwow, which is with this level, like this amazing level of like vibrancy and brightness. And then the ledger art style. So this was based on an idea that Morgan, who I mentioned earlier, had of ledger art is this Plains native art style where basically when the U.S. Army like forcibly relocated tribes to reservations, they left behind their army ledgers, like their notebooks with their various army notes in them. And for the native folks on these reservations, they literally took these ledgers, because this is kind of the only paper they had access to, and just drew art on top of them, literally like healing their trauma with art. And because of that, I thought it would be really great to show the grandmother character's perspective, which is a very nuanced and layered and complicated view on Native culture through something like ledger art. And something that I'm really proud of for the whole ledger art sequence is that so ledger art is art on top of pre-existing documents. So I actually decided to have the documents that we use be documents that are actually important in sort of Native history. So I got permission from the National Archives to use the Fort Laramie Treaty, which was the treaty that was protected the Standing Rock water protectors and was violated by the U.S. government in the No DAPL protests of the 2016s. There's a shot of the Alcatraz activists of the 1960s and 1970s, and we got permission from the Parks Department, I think, to use actual documents from the Alcatraz occupation. We have the Cherokee syllabary and a ledger from the Haskell Indian School, which is also used. And I reached out to museums and a lot of different organizations to get permission to use those documents. And then this was a really big get that I'm really proud of. We have actual audio from the Standing Rock Dakota Access Pipeline protests that is played over that flashback sequence. And I received permission from a really great documentary crew that was on the ground there to use that audio. So, it's a lot of depth for what is essentially a Looney Tunes short on a reservation. But, I kind of figured if I'm getting this opportunity to make this, I wanted to take, the biggest swing as I could.
And there was another piece that you got, or another part you got permission for during the 16-bit pixel when they're pulling up the totem pole.
Oh, thank you so much for asking me about that. So this whole film really is, for me, sort of like, I don't know, a love letter to my experiences with my culture. And one of the ways that I wanted that to be reflected is in the tribal center where the powwow takes place. Because I grew up in Washington State, our powwows tended to be in sort of multi-purpose spaces, boys and girls clubs, high school gyms, and that kind of thing. I think in different parts of the country, they'll often do outdoor powwows. But I wanted the tribal center that we see at the start of the short to be reflective of tribal centers that we, see often in the Pacific Northwest. So I took inspiration for like the shape of the roof from a couple of different tribal centers. And then the totem pole that we have in front of the tribal center, that's the totem pole that is in front of my old middle school in Marysville, Washington. And it was carved by a really amazing Tulalip carver who I got permission from him as well as the school to essentially digitize that totem pole and use inspiration from it for the totem pole that's in front of the tribal center. So it's, it's just a lot of me on screen, basically, and just things that I love and have been prevalent in my life,
And what was the experience like reaching out to the artist to request their permission?
Oh, I mean, I think that I feel like a lot of these asks are really casual. This was like, I reached out to the principal of the school and just said like, hey, who carved this? I would love to maybe draw inspiration from it for a film that I'm working on. And then she, gave me a name, and then I found him on Facebook and sent him a DM, and he was like, yeah, go for it. We actually had a screening on the Tulalip Reservation as part of Seattle International Film Festival a few weeks ago. And it was like 2 blocks away from the house that I grew up in, and the principal of that school and a few other artists who helped out with the short were able to attend that screening, and it was just such a great homecoming moment.
And from my research on this, part of your inspiration is to open doors and educate other people to different cultural ways of life and experiences and experience these things. Do you feel you're delivering that message in the way you were hoping?
Oh, wow, that's such a big question. Yeah, I hope so. Like, growing up, I loved, big comedy shows like Looney Tunes, The Simpsons, Family Guy, and stuff like that. But the only Native representation that I ever saw in those spaces as a kid were like 1800s Native stereotypes being shot at by Bugs Bunny in a cowboy hat, which I don't think counts as authentic Native representation. So, really my goal with POW was to tell a contemporary Native story of a Native family, that takes place in like a very Native location, and, kind of like create the types of work that I wish existed when I was a kid, or that I would have loved as like, that young Native kid sitting in the bleachers playing video games at a powwow. And something that I think is so cool about screening this at different festivals is, at this point I've been going through the festival circuit for a few months with it, and I've screened everywhere from, a festival put on by the Maori people in New Zealand to New York to Seattle to, Midwest, just like indie film fans to super Native heavy audiences in like Phoenix. And though this is such a specific Native story, like regardless of where I screen, whether there are Natives in the audience or not, whether there are Americans in the audience or not, the laughs are all in the same places, and like the emotional hits are all in the same places. And for me, it is just so validating to see that like Native stories are universal. It's like everybody can relate to, the story of a kid who feels like they're being punished by being dragged by their parents to something they don't want to go to. And just a couple small things about that. Like, there was also a lot of weight in making the short in like realizing, this is probably one of the first times that a powwow has ever been animated. This is probably one of the first times that like ledger art has ever been animated. So there was a lot of, to your question earlier, a lot of like care that went into getting that right. Like, we had a lot of consultants who worked on it to make sure that the powwow dances were accurate, that the regalia was accurate, and it was just really important knowing that like this sort of representation had probably never really been seen before in the animation space, that like we had to kind of like do it with our full hearts.
And you just referred to regalia. Please elaborate on that, because I know for myself, I didn't know that was the proper term, or that there was a difference between the terminology I'm used to in everyday languages. So please educate a little. Oh yeah, for sure. So regalia is like those are those really amazing elaborate outfits that you see Native folks wearing at like powwows and traditional events. And it's just that's the respectful term. Like, I feel like some people refer to it as a costume, which is like, that's for sure not what it is. So it's regalia is just the respectful term for like, if you see like very elaborate kind of indigenous garb, it's regalia is what it's referred to as. And then with your choices with the music and the dances being used, did that impact the regalia the characters were wearing? A little bit. So whenever I tell Native stories, I'm always, this is just a me thing, I'm always really passionate about having representation from a lot of different tribal cultures. So there's 574 tribes that are federally recognized in the United States, hundreds more at the state level. And these cultures are oftentimes very different from each other. Like, the differences culturally from one tribe to another might be as big as the differences from, the UK to Egypt or something like that. And I think that for a lot of non-natives, they kind of view us as a monolith, as like all Native culture is one thing. So the mom of the family in POW, she draws inspiration from my tribe, the Cowlitz people. So her regalia is very coastal Salish, which is a lot of woven cedar hats, shawls and things like that. And the dad of the tribe, the dad of the family in POW, is supposed to be representative of the Cherokee people. So he's got like a ribbon shirt that I think is in the colors of the Cherokee flag and a lot of different things like that. And
we have, I mentioned the Cherokee syllabary in the short. That's supposed to be kind of representative of the dad of the short and the grandma of the short's families. And, as far as like regalia affecting dances, I worked directly with a couple of powwow dancers, like a men's fancy dance consultant, which is a type of powwow dance, and then a women's fancy shawl consultant, which is another type of powwow dance. And they had their own regalia, and they sent us, videos to basically make sure that their dances were matching up with the regalia that they were wearing. And we actually, I think, rotoscoped, it was just an animation style where like literally animators like drew over their dances from their reference videos they sent us just to make sure that it was like so accurate, And for all the background characters, just like one of the benefits of having a lot of Native folks in the production is we could say like, oh yeah, what kind of regalia are the people in the background wearing, And that's just the benefit of having a lot of Natives on the team, is you could kind of spot check about like, oh, that doesn't feel right, or oh yeah, that feels right, or oh yeah, this person's from this culture, or this is an intertribal powwow, which means a lot of different tribes as opposed to just one tribe's powwow.
And with this, you're breaking down barriers for the Native representation. I mean, here you are, you've got films and film festivals, you're breaking down doors to create pathways for future generations, which I'm sure is not something you ever expected to be doing, but you're creating what you wish you had. Please talk to us about, how you got here and where you're going.
Oh yeah, it's wild. I mean, in my professional life, I've written for a lot of very, I guess I would say, Native-heavy TV shows like Spirit Rangers on Netflix, Molly of Denali, and then also a lot of non-Native TV shows like a Looney Tunes relaunch called New Looney Tunes for Cartoon Network, shows like Paw Patrol, Coco Melon, and things like that. And before that, I came up just through the Los Angeles comedy scene, places like the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater, Second City, the Groundlings, and all that. And, though I feel really fortunate to have done a lot of work in the, I guess I would say, younger kids space, I had up to this point not had an opportunity to like really bring my love of comedy into a piece. I really wanted to create a short where I could show that a Native kid can be as funny as Bart Simpson. And, just to be able to do that with POW, like this to me feels like kind of, this is going to sound sappy, but it's like kind of a culmination of like everything that I am as a person, from my, career and all of that of, being a comedian and coming up through comedy spaces, to my like, passion for my culture that was passed down to me by my mom, and, my, like the love that I have for my tribe and the love that my tribe has for me. So, this really to me feels like it's like a thesis piece of like, on some level the past 15 years of my career, but on another level the past however many years of my life. And it's tough to like think about what's next because I'm so focused on just getting the word out about POW. But I'm really excited to say I'm currently writing on a Nickelodeon show called Rebel and Crew. That's our new season just came out a few months ago, and I've got a couple of other projects that I'm working on that are very much Native culture forward. Because a research study came out saying that like 87% of U.S. schools don't teach Native history past 1900, and your average person knows like next to nothing about Native people. So, through my work, I want to show that like for non-Natives that like Natives are still here and we're a vibrant culture. And to Native folks, I just want to like tell cool Native stories that like, makes all my cousins and aunties and uncles laugh.
And for those of us who are not Native, but we want to experience and learn more about Native cultures, is it appropriate to go to powwows?
Yeah, I think that a powwow is essentially like a big party. There are actually a couple of resources that you can find online. There's a website called powwows.com that I think has like sort of a guide to attending powwows. Here are the things to do that are respectful. Here are the things to do that are disrespectful. There are definitely a couple of cultural things to be aware of, like if you're not dancing, don't go and walk onto the dance floor, that kind of thing. But don't, if somebody comes by with nice regalia, regalia, don't tug at the regalia. It's a lot of this is just basic human stuff. But yeah, so I would say if you're not Native, or if you are Native and you've never been to a powwow, like go to a powwow. They're super fun. There's, you know, amazing food like fry bread and Indian tacos. There's really cool, just like, you know, Native art and jewelry that you can purchase to support Native creatives. And, you know, it's just this, it's this really beautiful representation of culture. And that's something that I've like, you know, when I was that young Native kid sitting on the bleachers at a powwow, I thought that I was being brought there as like a punishment, you know, just because like my parents didn't want me to play video games or whatever. But as I grew older, like I learned that, you know, I mean, there was a real effort for hundreds of years for the U.S. government to like erase and destroy Native culture like systemically. And like, I mean, it was literally like illegal for Native folks to dance until like the 1920s or the 1950s or something like that. And like sometime in the past 100 years. So a powwow, like, you know, my mom taking to that was not a punishment. It was her, you know, basically creating an like unbroken chain of Native folks who were continuing this culture that, you know, our ancestors fought for hundreds of years for us to be able to practice. So it's, if you frame it that way, it's not like a, you know, it's not a punishment to go to it. It's like this beautiful act of cultural resistance. And it's like, when you think about it in those terms, it's the coolest thing ever. So yeah, if you're a non-Native and you want to go to a powwow, show up, help support the culture, go see a cool event, you know, go to powwows.com and read the list to make sure you don't like accidentally do something that's not cool. But other than that, you know, go support, buy some cool jewelry, eat, you know, let's say like 1 to 2 Indian tacos, and then feel like a little bit like you ate too much butter afterwards, but you'll thank yourself for it.
Well, thank you very much. Would you please provide your socials, the socials for POW? How do we follow the film? How do we follow you? How do we support both?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So you can follow me on Instagram and Threads at Joey Clift with 5 or 6 eyes. The reason for that's a 12-year-old took Joey Clift with 1 eye, so I just have to deal. And then you can follow me on TikTok, Twitter, and Blue Sky at Joeytainment. And then if you want to see more of my work, go to my website, joeyclift.com. And if you want to follow, you know, more places that POW is screening, just check out my Instagram. That's where I post, you know, most of my upcoming screenings.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we wish you safe travels and safe journeys for POW.
Oh, for sure. Thanks so much for having me. And thanks so much, Bentonville Film Festival, for screening me. I love this fest, and I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you.